Hello everyone and welcome back. It's Jason again. We're going to watch part 2 of this episode, so if you haven't seen part 1, click on the link in the description, or if you're on Udemy, just go ahead and go back in the course. Part 1 was all about the how versus the why and asking the right questions when learning to code or learning anything at all. So in this video, we're going to dig deeper into that and we're going to do some more hands-on exercises. So let's go ahead and switch scenes here. And if you want to know, I'm not going to put this in full screen because this logo will block some of Steven's head here. So I'm going to leave it like this, and let's go ahead and watch.
It's exactly as complicated as I needed it to be to do what I needed it to do. Because every line of code I write has a why.
So here Steven says every line of code he writes has a why. So let's think about the why of this function he highlighted right here. It looks like something, it's called clip, and it pulls a source from Amazon. This is Amazon Web Services. And it doesn't look like it's the full URL because it adds a day and a name. It does set the width and height from to 320 by 240. So the question is why not just put like a full URL link? And the answer to that might be, well, maybe this function gets reused over and over to pull up a bunch of different video sources. So instead of having to write this code over and over, Steven wrote a convenient way to just pass in the day because they're organized by days, and then also the name of the clip. Yeah, so that makes the development a lot easier. And then here you can actually see it's already used in this function below, inside this clip card function, which is probably one of these. And then I'm guessing that this also gets used over and over. So let's go ahead and see what else Steven has to say.
This piece of code in this highlighted box right here creates an HTML video tag, pulling a file from my S3 account. I wonder if you could figure out from the code here how to download.
I wonder if we can do that too. So Steven gave us a challenge. Let's see if we can do it. 19-videos.amazon.aws.com/day. So here's where we get stuck. Now it adds on day and a slash. That means it's in a folder called day something, and then it has the name of the file. We don't actually know a name, but let's just guess with day 1. And we did see a cat video at the end of part 1. Let's just see if there is a cat video. And nope, access denied. There probably doesn't exist. Now, so we're missing some information here. So we can't pull up a video there, but maybe later on in this video, if we ever see a code where it passes in the day and the name, then we can absolutely finish this URL. Keep your eye out for that. See if you can spot it before I do, if one exists. So
some footage that I took.
I'm gonna paste it in, and I'm gonna run it, and if what I got is the same as what you got, then you're right. Yeah?
I want to apologize to every student I taught that way.
So Steven says he wants to apologize. And you can see in this video, he's teaching a class. And he asks the students, if their code looks like his code, then you got it right. So what's wrong with that? I mean, that's a typical way to teach things. You teach how to do something, you do it, students do it, you check if it matches. One of the things it sort of doesn't let you do is be creative and try different things. Like if you're creative and you try different things, then no, the students' results are not going to look like Steven's results. So what Steven's apologizing for is that he did not, get the students to think about all the whys. Instead, he's just teaching them how to do this specific thing and then checking their results, which is not what we want. So let's go ahead and continue the video.
I did it too. I am totally guilty. I have told many a student that you can get a great job if you learn how to code, that you can go work at Google where they have really nice offices if you learn how to code. What COVID-19 has taught me in a matter of weeks is that we need different whys. We need to wise up.
Love the pun, Steven. So yeah, Steven says we need to wise up. So we're actually going to use that as a prompt for our hands-on activity. So let's go ahead and run like an example lesson. And I'm going to do an example where I focus on the how, and then we're going to do the same example where we focus on the why. So if you want to follow along, you can, or you can just wait for me to do the why version, and then you can follow along there. So we are going, let me put this in full screen. We are going to go to a website called WeScheme. What's nice is you don't have to install anything. You just go to the site. It has a built-in editor in the browser. And this is a language called Scheme. It's based on Lisp. I mostly code in Racket these days, which is based on Scheme. And what's nice about this, it already has drawing libraries to like draw basic shapes and put them together, rearrange them in different ways. So we're going to, let's say, here's an example lesson is I'm going to teach you how to make a 5x5 grid of outlined red squares. And first we're going to define a tile. That tile is going to be a square of size 40, outline red. And then we're going to define a row of tiles, and it's going to be made of side-by-side tiles. And then I'm going to find a, let's see, grid 5x5. And that's going to be made of multiple rows of tiles. I'm going to copy that. So we have a grid, 5x5 grid, made of a bunch of tiles, and those, a bunch of rows of tiles, and a row of tile is going to be made of a couple tiles, and a tile is a square that's outlined with red. And I need one more thing to actually draw the 5x5 grid. And let's go ahead and run that. And there we go. We have a 5x5 grid. And that was me thinking about the how. I just showed you how to define a tile, how to define a row of tiles, how to define the grid made out of those, and how to put it in here, right? But I didn't explain the why of anything. So let's go ahead and do this exercise again. But this time we're going to focus on the why. So let's go ahead and hit run to clear that. So we want to make a 5x5 grid of outlined red squares. That, if I don't know anything, that sounds a little complicated, but we can simplify that. This is calling back to a previous episode. The easiest way to make something less complicated is to do the easy thing first. So the easy thing is like, I wish I just had a function that made a 5x5 grid. So I would say grid 5x5. Now this is not something that exists yet. I can hit run and it'll say, well, that's not defined. But that's what I want to exist. I want it to be that easy to just pull up a grid. And maybe you might ask, well, why even have this? Maybe I'm working on a board game or chess or checkers game, and I need a way to pull up a grid over and over to set up the board. In this case, mine's just 5x5. You'll need a little bit more for chess or checkers. But there's our why of having this function at all to begin with. Now, I made grid 5x5. So let's go ahead and define that grid 5x5. Now, I'm just going to do a square 40 solid red. Now, I know this is not a 5x5 grid. It is just going to be a square. But why would I, define this right now? It's so that I can actually have working code, so I can run the code and see the results each step of the way. So this is the typical thing you would, like the first thing you would draw using this WeScheme. If you run through the tutorial, it's like, hey, let's learn how to draw a red square. But I want a grid, so I know this function called beside that will place things side by side. So I have a square, and I'm going to add another square and see what that looks like. Oh, whoops, I need one more end parentheses. Okay, we have two squares, but I can't really tell that they're two squares because they're solid. So let's change this to an outline. Why? Because, we can't tell that they're squares. It's as simple as that, right? So there it is. And if I want to do 5 of them, I can go ahead and paste this a few times. Cool, I have one row, and if I want to have multiple rows, I can take this whole thing and use something called above. Let me hit tab, that will automatically indent this snippet of code, and I'm going to paste this right here. Let me go ahead and auto indent again. There we go. So now I have this whole thing is a row of squares, and that's going to be above another row of squares. I'm just going to do 2 for now because we're going to change this code in a second. Oh, and I forgot I need to close the above. There we go. There, we have 2 rows. Now I could just copy this and paste it 3 more times and be done, but I can already see that we're repeating a lot of code here. And in every language, there's a principle called dry, which is the do not repeat yourself, right? Anytime we can, we want to make functions, reuse functions. And for one, it'll make this a lot cleaner. So let's go ahead and take this whole piece out. We have this beside. Let's go ahead and take it out. And I'm going to define that as a separate thing. Define row of tiles. Indent that. And that means I don't need this thing anymore. All I need is row of tiles that I will call 5 times. So I'll go ahead and copy that. And I could be done here, but again, I still see some kind of repeated, somewhat complex code. I don't need I already know I want the same size 40 over and over and outlined red. I'm not going to change that unless you're doing something fancy or artistic, but I know that that's just going to be reused over and over. So I'll go ahead and take that out and turn that into just a tile, right? And then I can delete all this and just call it tile. And since it's so short now, I can actually maybe even put this side by side visually in the editor so that I can have a little better sense that, hey, these are going to be side by side. It's a row of tiles, and these are multiple rows above each other. And let's go ahead and check our code. Hey, there is our 5 by 5 grid of outlined red squares. And that's how I would teach it if I wanted to focus on the whys every step of the way. So there's our little hands-on activity. I think there's a little bit more in this video, so let's go ahead and watch the rest of this.
And then here, I think this is quite beautiful.
Oh, this is quite beautiful because I actually can see our missing piece of data from our first exercise from before. So let's go ahead and pull that back up. 1 second. There we go. We tried to do cat and we tried to do day 1. Those don't work, but here's actual data. In fact, it's going to pull up a video of a workplace setup, the coffee mug close-up, Lindsay, my other coworker. So day 1, because 1 gets passed in there, and then we have this vid link. So we'll go ahead and type, let's see, is this cut off? Let me pull this higher. Vid underscore 20200. These aren't random numbers. This is just a timestamp. And let's see what we have. There's our mug close up.
Hungry?
Mm-hmm.
What's for dinner?
I guess that chicken tikka masala that I made a couple days ago.
Chicken tikka masala. That sounds really good right now. Anyway, yeah, so we were able to complete that challenge that Stephen gave us. We were able to figure out this URL. Of course, we had to look at 2 different parts of the video, but we did it. So let's see what else Stephen has to say in the rest of this clip.
Here I make a row. This is a row down here. And each of these is one of those cards. We call them cards.
With this show, I am going to try to show my thinking process, my design process that starts on paper and leads to code. And I want you to do it with me because, quite frankly, your ideas might be better than mine.
All right, that's the end of that video. I like that last bit. The best way to get the whys is to ask how to make the world better. And that's a great way to drive kind of everything that we learn. So let me go ahead and switch scenes here. So that'll be it for this episode. If you are on Udemy, there will be some assignments below. For everyone else, thanks for tuning in and watching this video. I will put a link to that code editor. It's called WeScheme. I suggest you go ahead and play with that. Try the functions that we did here. Try repeating this lesson, and then try being creative and try see what else you can do with it. All right, that's it for now, and I will see everyone on the next video.